My name is Sarah Winnicki, and I'm reading an excerpt from Charles Dickens' Bleak House. This excerpt comes from the end of chapter 55 and follows the murder of the dangerous lawyer, Mr. Tulkinghorn, the he that the accused and disgraced Lady Dedlock is referring to in this section. While not the murderer, she feels guilty because she had thought of committing the act to hide the existence of her illegitimate daughter, Esther. Now that her husband and the world know, Lady Dedlock takes her flight. So, all is broken down. Her name is in these many mouths. Her husband knows his wrongs. Her shame will be published, maybe spreading while she thinks about it. And in addition to the thunderbolt, so long foreseen by her, so unforeseen by him, she is denounced by an invisible accuser as the murderess of her enemy. Her enemy he was, and she has often wished him dead. Her enemy he is, even in his grave. This dreadful accusation comes upon her, like a new torment at his lifeless hand, and when she recalls how she was secretly at his door that night, and how she may be represented to have sent her favorite girl away, so soon before, merely to release herself from observation, she shudders as if the hangman's hands were at her neck. She has thrown herself upon the floor and lies with her hair all wildly scattered, and her face buried in the cushions of a couch. She rises up, hurries to and fro, flings herself down again, and rocks and moans. The horror that is upon her is unutterable. If she really were the murderess, it could hardly be, for the moment, more intense. For, as her murderous perspective, before doing the deed, however subtle the precautions for its commission, would have been closed up by a gigantic dilation of the hateful figure, preventing her from seeing any consequences beyond it, and as those consequences would have rushed in an unimaginable flood, the moment the figure was laid low, which always happens when a murder is done. So now she sees that when he used to be on the watch before her, as she used to think, if some mortal stroke would but fall on this old man and take him from my way, it was but wishing that all he had held against her in his hand might be flung to the winds and chance sown in many places. So too with the wicked relief she felt in his death. What was his death but the keystone of a gloomy arch removed, and now the arch begins to fall in 1,000 fragments, each crushing and mangling piecemeal. Thus a terrible impression steals upon and overshadows her, that from his pursuer, living or dead, obdurate and imperturbable before her in his well-remembered shape, or not more obdurate and imperturbable in his coffin bed, there is no escape but in death. Hunted, she flies. The complication of her shame, her dread, remorse, and misery overwhelms her at its height, and even her own strength of self-reliance is overturned and whirled away, like a leaf before a mighty wind. She hurriedly addresses these lines to her husband, seals, and leaves them on her table. If I am sought for, or accused of his murder, believe that I am wholly innocent. Believe no other good of me, for I am innocent of nothing else that you have heard, or will hear, laid to my charge. He prepared me, on that final night, for his disclosure of my guilt to you. After he had left me, I went out, on pretense of walking in the garden where I sometimes walk, but really to follow him, and make one last petition that he would not protract the dreadful suspense on which I had been racked by him, you do not know how long, but would mercifully strike next morning. I found his house dark and silent. I rang twice at his door, but there was no reply, and I came home. I have no home left. I will encumber you no more. May you, in your just resentment, be able to forget the unworthy woman on whom you have wasted a most generous devotion, who avoids you only with a deeper shame than that which she hurries from herself, and who writes this last adieu. She veils and dresses quickly, leaves all her jewels and her money, listens, goes downstairs at a moment when the hall is empty, opens and shuts the great door, flutters away in the shrill, frosty wind.